This video is on the requirements for a complete and high-quality application for the Facility Hardship Program. During this video, you'll learn about available resources and where to find them, the required documents for a complete application, and how to submit your complete application. Thank you for watching. As discussed in further detail in video 2, one of the best resources available to applicants is an OPSC pre-application meeting. To schedule a pre-application meeting or ask any questions you may have, please contact a member of the Facility Hardship Program. Contact information can be found at www.dgs.ca.gov/OPSC/programs/Facility Hardship Program. Now, before we go through the requirements for a complete application, I would like to first take a minute to talk about conceptual approvals. Conceptual approvals were a way that a district could have select components of their applications reviewed and approved by the State Allocation Board before having their plans approved by the Division of the State Architect. These approvals did not reserve any funding or a spot on a waiting list for funding. And we found that occasionally they resulted in increased confusion in situations where the project conditions changed between the district receiving a conceptual approval and then requesting funding approval later after they receive their plans. For this reason, the approach that we recommend is to submit a complete funding application for your project all at one time rather than bifurcating it into a conceptual approval and then later a funding application. Please keep this in mind anytime you see a requirement for conceptual approvals compared to funding applications, such as in the School Facility Program Handbook, for example. Remember that both areas are necessary to be fulfilled as part of the application process. When beginning the process of putting your application together, the best place to start would be to pull up a document called the Facility Hardship Request Sheet from the Office of Public School Construction's website. This form can be found at www.dgs.ca.gov/OPSC/forms/Facility Hardship Program Forms. Once you open this document, you can see that it's almost like a checklist which can be used to assemble the application. It not only lists all of the required documents to have a complete application, it also lists the requirements and references for each one. Here is a concise list of the documents that are required for a complete application. The first, an industry specialist report from an expert specializing in the threat that needs mitigating, with a corresponding letter from a government-level agency. We'll go over these documents more in a moment. The next, a cost-benefit analysis. This too we'll go over in a minute to explain how exactly to calculate it. The next would be a site diagram or A1 drawings. These help us have a better understanding of the project and sometimes is also used to confirm the cost-benefit analysis calculation as well as calculate grant amounts. The next is an application for funding, which is Form SAB 5004, and then a site development worksheet, though that is only required if you're actually replacing your buildings. Next would be a detailed cost estimate. Please review the last video in this series for more information on the requirements for cost estimates for the Facility Hardship Program. Then you would also need to submit DSA plans and specifications along with their approval letters, and an approval letter from the California Department of Education for the project. Lastly, you would also be required to submit a letter from the Career Technical Education Advisory Committee confirming that the district's CTE needs are being met. Let's start with the Industry Specialist Report. This is a report from a specialist in the industry relating to the health and safety threat that needs mitigating at the district's site. For example, if the facility has structural concerns, then the report would be from an architect or structural engineer. If the facility had mold contamination, you would submit a report by an environmental health specialist. These reports need to identify the health and safety threat as well as the minimum work necessary to mitigate the threat. Once you have the industry specialist report, you'll then submit it to a corresponding local, state, or federal government agency for review and request they provide a letter of concurrence with the presence of the threat and the prescribed mitigation measures outlined in the report. Next, let's go over the cost-benefit analysis. The cost-benefit analysis is a tool that is required to be drafted by the district by the School Facility Program regulations. It's essentially a very simple calculation to determine whether your project is eligible for rehabilitation funding or replacement funding. Just to be clear, what type of funding your project is eligible for is not determined and does not dictate what the districts are entitled to do with their facilities. It's simply a way that the most economical way to fund the project for the state is determined. To calculate this, you'll compare the total minimum cost required to mitigate the health and safety threat at the facility to the current replacement cost of the facility. The current replacement cost is a specific dollar amount per square foot of interior facility space and is adjusted by the State Allocation Board each year. You can find the most updated current replacement cost on the Office of Public School Construction's website in the most recent annual adjustment of school facility program grants board item. This is typically in the first or second archived State Allocation Board agenda each year. You could also call the Office of Public School Construction's general phone number, a Facility Hardship Program Analyst, or your OPSC Project Manager for assistance. Let's go through a couple examples to demonstrate how to calculate the cost-benefit analysis. First, let's say that the minimum cost to repair your facility is $500,000, and the size of your building is 10,000 square feet. Based on the 2017 index, the current replacement cost of the building would be $3,620,000, which would make the rehabilitation cost 13% of the current replacement cost. This project would qualify for funding based on the rehabilitation costs of the facility. Comparatively, if the minimum cost to repair the facility was $2 million for a 10,000 square foot building, the cost to repair the facility would be 55% of the current replacement cost. This would result in the funding for the project being calculated based on either replacement cost per square foot of the building or pupil grants. Next, let's discuss the requirements of the site diagram for a moment. The site diagram is most helpful when it's a 1A diagram that shows the building locations on site as well as uses of the individual spaces within the buildings, like a classroom, janitor's closet, hall, etc., and the square footage amounts of each of those spaces. This document is used to better understand where the qualifying facility is located in relation to the rest of the site, as well as in the calculation of eligible project grants. The Form SAB 5004, that's the actual application requesting funding, and the Site Development Worksheet will also be required. These documents need to be generated by the district, and they can be found on the OPSC's website at www.dgs.ca.gov/OPSC/forms/Facility Hardship Program Forms. Once on this site, you can click the second accordion, which will expand, titled Facility Hardship Program Funding Forms. Here, you will find hyperlinks to those forms, as well as instructions on how to fill them out. The last document that will need to be drafted by the district is the Career Technical Education, also known as CTE, letter, and is simply a letter or meeting minutes from the district CTE Advisory Committee stating that it has reviewed the district-wide CTE needs in relation to the specific project site and that the district-wide needs are being adequately met. Once all of the documentation has been gathered and a complete application has been compiled, the district can either mail the application or physically deliver it to the Office of Public School Construction at 707 3rd Street, 6th floor, West Sacramento, California, 95605. Thank you for watching this video on how to submit a complete application for the Facility Hardship Program. Please watch the next video in this series to learn more about the specific requirements for cost estimates for this program.